I think what's happening in music today with regards to females is that we have the capability now of singing every kind of music.
Who you calling a bitch? All I want to do is have a little fun before I die.
For many years, it was just relegated to one kind of music. You will sing love songs and that's it.
Come on.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
Sadly, society's always been imbalanced and it's never been in our favour, so we've learned to have to fight. I would like to think that in the 90s, stepping into the new millennium, things are a little different.
I've been trying to figure out why that is. Why is it happening now?
It's part of what has grown up since the 60s. The freshness of a woman's point of view is obviously part of what the world is about.
Women are the shit. We've been the shit. You know what I mean? Probably somebody just finally realized it.
Welcome to VH1's 100 Greatest Women of Rock and Roll. I'm Courtney Cox, and I'll be your guide through this hour of rock and roll history. The way we see it, making great music has nothing to do with gender. But for those who still believe that rock is a male art form, stay tuned because we've got 20 more of the most important and influential artists in the history of rock and roll. And there's not a single male among them. There are countless women who deserve to make the list, but we had to narrow it down, and here's a look at how we did it.
VH1 asked the world's most influential women to name the greatest women in the history of rock and roll. Ballots were sent, votes were calculated, and now each of these 100 artists will have a place of their own in rock and roll history.
Before we continue our journey to the top, check out who you may have missed in the preceding hours. Our first artists have been called the female Led Zeppelin, but at the beginning of their career, they were turned down by every major record label in America. When their debut album, Dreamboat Annie, sold over 1 million copies, the industry was forced to recognize that women could also crank it up, way up.
They broke down the doors of hard rock in the 70s. As front women and songwriters of heart, sisters Ann and Nancy Wilson proved to the industry that women could rock just as hard as any of the boys. Establishing themselves as serious musicians, Nancy became one of the first female guitar heroes, and no one could argue the power of Ann's voice.
Like Robert Plant with is that how I describe her.
Ooh, Barracuda.
There aren't too many like them, and there's not too many like Ann, especially in the rock thing. That girl can sing.
Ann and Nancy, you've got some great songs. Really, really great songs.
What about love? Don't you want someone to care about you? These dreams go on when they come.
I would actually sit there and cry in concerts and watch her. Just so much attitude.
I guess we never felt like pioneers necessarily, but we knew that we were different. What we were trying to do was to be cool examples of how women or girls can go up there and be strong and be equal to men and be okay in the context of a heavy-handed rock experience.
Following Heart's cue, our next artist ignited the 80s with her powerful voice and tough chick persona.
She was studying opera music before she rebelled and turned to rock and roll. Armed with a 3-octave range, Pat Benatar emerged in the late 70s as one of the most aggressive voices rock has ever known.
Pat has that incredible instrument, that incredible, wonderful voice. I think she's had some great rock classics.
Yeah, she's a rock chick, for sure.
My favorite voice in the world. I think it's the best voice in the world. I love the independence to say, listen, this is what I want to do. This is how I am, if you like it or not.
Bursting with attitude, Benatar wanted nothing to do with the soft images expected of female artists.
I was ready to rock. I was absolutely militant and ready to go. When I thought about what I was doing, I knew that if it succeeded, that young women would have someone to look to like I didn't have when I was trying to find somebody. But truthfully, was I thinking I'm going to open doors and break ground for future whip? No. I'm happy that it happened for anyone.
The artist at number 38 is one of the most successful female singers of all time. It's the first of her 2 appearances in our special, but this time she's going solo.
She defined the Motown sound and turned soul music into pop. Former leader of the Supremes, Diana Ross crossed gender and racial barriers with her charismatic voice. As a solo artist, she matured into the original diva, an epic performer who scored nearly 30 hits throughout 3 decades.
Even as a little girl, you know, I'd hear her sing, and I thought to myself, wow, you know, how unique her voice sounds.
Diana Ross became a monumental role model for African-American women who watched her conquer the world beaming.
Diana Ross is just the diva.
Her stuff is just evocative, her music, her voice is original, it's beautiful, and she can just take you places that nobody else can.
Reach out and touch somebody's hand, make this world a better place.
Diana Ross was the bomb because she just, I mean, she ruled in the 60s, but that wasn't good enough because then she had to come back in the 70s and in the 80s and take over once again.
From one diva to another, our next artist was the voice of an era as the undisputed queen of disco.
Some say the disco era produced only one bona fide talent, Donna Summer, whose voice rang out long after the disco party was over. Her 17-minute moaning masterpiece defined the decade and lived on as more than just a hit. It was a statement. For millions flocking to the dance floors in search of transcendence, Summer's voice was the perfect medium to help them find it.
They were just
dancing and dancing and dancing, and they loved Donna, and she was their idol. And that was really the first major movement in disco.
I remember Brian Eno running into my room with a single in his hand. He said, "I've heard the future." That Teutonic drumming, that black voice, this is fantastic.
And with Donna Summer, I mean, she was like a rock star.
Donna, what a powerhouse, what a voice. Great material. She was very strong.
In the late 70s, the disco movement was just a voice. That wasn't the case with Donna Summer, and that's probably why her songs still live today.
Time magazine's analysis of Donna Summer's Love to Love You Baby found 21 of what they called orgasms back in the recording in 1976. Lucky lady. Still to come in this hour, an Irish rebel.
She's the 90s angry young woman.
Welcome back to the 100 Greatest Women of Rock and Roll, VH1's tribute to the most influential women in the history of music. The artist at number 36 was discovered when her piano teacher submitted a tape of her to Iceland's Radio 1. The station actually aired the tape, which subsequently earned her a record contract at age 11.
From a country where they still speak the language of the Vikings came one of the great innovators of modern music, Bjork. She is Iceland's only international star, and she maintains her critical acclaim despite her radical lyrics and singing. Fusing punk and dance music, Bjork's infectious rhythms have made her one of the most versatile voices of the post-punk era.
She has such a creative look, and her vocal style is so unique. And her songs and her lyrics, I just love her.
And if you complain once more, you meet time, I'm your
Everything she does is incredibly compelling and beautiful and weird and everything.
When Bjork was fronting the Sugar Cubes in the late 80s, music videos often featured women as merely sex objects, and politics completely disappeared from rock music. That's when a young radical burst into the scene as if arriving from another decade, not another planet.
She was unlike anybody the music industry had ever seen or heard. With her shaved head, brash political statements, and spellbinding voice, Sinead O'Connor stunned the world with her debut record in 1987. In the years that followed, she declared war on America, the music industry, and the press, and prevailed as one of the most brilliant, fearless, and unapologetic artists of her generation.
Sinead O'Connor, when I think of her wrestling with her demons a lot.
She's the 90s angry young woman, isn't she?
Maybe I wasn't mean, but I really don't think so. I go out every night and sleep all day.
I always said I thought she shaved her head because she was too beautiful, and that she was afraid that she wouldn't be taken seriously if she had hair.
I went to the doctor, and guess what he told me?
For such a little tiny person, there's a lot of her.
'Cause nothing compares.
And that beautiful voice.
Nothing compares to you.
While Sinead created a defining self-image with her bald head, this next performer is known for her gorgeous, big, blonde wigs.
She grew up in a family of 12 children in the mountains of Tennessee. and her parents were so poor, they paid the doctor who delivered her in cornmeal.
Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living, barely getting by.
But Dolly Parton was blessed with a perfect voice, an hourglass figure, and a charm that has made her the icon of modern country music.
Here you come again, looking better than a body has a right to.
Well, Dolly's voice just thrilled me the first time I heard it. And then discovering that she was such an amazing writer. Because I think that women that also write as well as sing has always impressed me and inspired me.
She was the only really country music female that was my idol as a child. As outrageous at times as it was, she was herself, and I had so much admiration for that.
My music is the main love of my life, and I think it was my songs and my music that got me out of the Smokies and that brought me here.
Islands in the stream, that is what we are.
I had always believed that I would be a star, and the word star to me just meant whatever I would be doing that would put me on stage and put me where people could see me and I could see people, and we could share this wonderful feeling that you give back and forth.
From one lover to another.
This next artist followed Dolly's path, recording country music that crossed over into the mainstream. But there was nothing mainstream about this gender bender.
She's an out-of-the-closet Canadian who became a country star. The versatile Catherine Dawn Lang broke every rule in Nashville with her unconventional image and music. Throughout her many incarnations, Katie has crooned her way to the top of the pop and country charts, earned 3 Grammys, and proved there are no bounds for her innate talent.
I've always loved Katie Lang's voice. I like seeing women that make it on the sheer strength of their talent.
She has this destiny in her voice, and it's so real and it's so haunting. As long as we're alive, you'll hear about Katie Lang. She'll be around forever.
Stick around, we'll be right back with a fierce rock and roller.
I was like Marie Osmond compared to her.
We're back with the 100 greatest women of rock and roll. The artist at number 32 formed her first band at age 15, the all-female rock band, The Runaways. When the band broke up in 1980, she went solo and began a new rock and roll legacy.
As leader of the pioneering rock group The Runaways, Joan Jett was a punk before punk was invented. A hard rock icon before anyone ever heard of a woman playing hard rock. Snarling and fierce, dressed in leather, Joan Jett created a whole new space for women in music. A place where they could wield a guitar, play loudly, and apologize to no one.
She was such a hard ass. She was great. I mean, I was like Marie Osmond compared to her. You know, she was so hardcore.
I always thought Joan Jett was the most talented girl out of the Runaways. Joan is a really good singer, and there's no gimmicks or anything with her.
She really is dedicated to what she does. She couldn't do anything else in her life. I mean, that was it. There was no other way.
Our next artist continues to be incredibly successful as a singer, actress, producer, and director. But to us, she's simply Barbra.
To her, singing was a mere stepping stone to the stage. But from the very beginning, it was Barbra Streisand's voice that won her the passionate love of millions. It is simply one of the most exquisite instruments ever recorded in popular music.
Soft as an easy chair.
A wonderful instrument. Wonderful instrument. She's got chords that a lot of people wish they had.
Barbra Streisand is just a tremendous artist.
The person that I look up to the most in show business, as an actress, as a singer, definitely, as a woman, is definitely Barbra Streisand.
After this next artist was expelled from high school, she ran away from home and hit the streets of LA in search of a new life in music.
Rickie Lee Jones shied away from the glamorous roles reserved for women in pop music.
Rickie Lee, she is like, my favorite singer.
Chronicling the lives of the disaffected, Rickie's music blended jazz, folk, and R&B with a beat-style delivery.
You're looking for something to do. There's always something happening there.
She remains a compelling artist who uses pop music as a vehicle for her unique storytelling.
Rickie Lee Jones, she's a great songwriter and really emotional, really beautiful, passionate voice.
It's not enough to have a good voice. It's what you do with it.
Don't you know Chuck is in love?
And certainly, when you hear Rickie Lee Jones, you know who it is.
Chuck is in love. Chuck is in love. Chuck is in love. Chuck is in love. He's in love. Oh,
As a teenager, our next artist teamed up with her brother for a Battle of the Bands contest at the Hollywood Bowl. They not only won the contest, but they found themselves with a record contract and the chance to share her ethereal voice with the world.
The drums were her first musical passion, but it was Karen Carpenter's perfect voice that moved her legions of fans.
Why do birds suddenly appear?
I love Karen's voice. She has a sweet voice, and with a lot of presence.
Just like me, they long to be close to you.
In an age of turmoil, the Carpenters' refreshing melodies were credited for bringing back hope, happiness, and harmony to popular music.
Sharing horizons that are new to us. Watching the signs along the way.
Her voice is so distinctive, you know? It's like, it doesn't matter how many times you hear it, you'll still get goosebumps when it comes on.
Working together day to day. Together.
But her untimely death made us listen all the more closely to the undertones we may have missed.
Long ago, and oh so far away, I fell in love with you.
She had this voice that was bigger than what they were supposed to be, what their image was. And, you know, it has this incredible, sort of sexy and sad thing about it.
Don't you remember you told me you loved me, baby? You said you'd be coming back this way again, baby. Baby, 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 oh baby. I love you, I really do.
The early 70s was the golden age of singer-songwriters in America. At that time, Paul Simon called the artist at number 28 the most interesting personality making.
The daughter of publishing legend Richard Simon, Carly was raised among the elite, where she cultivated her witty outlook on society.
Things happen and I make notes. So I was at a party and somebody walked into the party and somebody said to me, look, don't they look like they've just walked onto a yacht? And I thought, yeah, that might be a good opening for a song, so I wrote it down.
You walked into the party like you were walking onto a yacht. Your hat's strategic.
You hear things all around you, and the trick is to just remember them, is to just write them down so that, you know, you can use them somewhere.
You're so vain. Probably think this song is about you. You're
Carly's a great singer-songwriter.
I wasn't looking, but somehow you found me.
She's always been her own woman in music, writing her own stuff and being really involved with it. Anybody that can do that, you have to have a lot of respect for.
Nobody does it better. Nobody does it.
Her introspective lyrics seemed to map the hearts of a whole generation.
Baby, baby, darling, you're the best.
This next woman's songs of protest spoke powerfully for those whose voices went unheard.
When you're given a draft card, a deed of ownership, there is conscription state.
Joan Baez used her crystalline soprano voice as an instrument for social change.
Carry it on.
The purity of her voice, it was so absolutely beautiful.
Carry it on.
There was something very deeply moving and spiritual about the combination of her voice and those lyrics.
A tireless civil rights and anti-war activist, Baez was not only the voice of the 60s, she was also its conscience.
The machine guns are roaring, the puppets heave rocks, and fiends nail time bombs to the hands of the clocks.
We appreciated her politics and her career, and she's a strong woman. She was just my hero for being a political activist and for just the absolute aching beauty of her voice.
But farewell, Angelina, the sky is erupting. I must go where it's quiet.
Baez is known as the Queen of Folk to Dylan's King. Our next artist is simply known as the Empress of the Blues.
My man's got a heart like a rocket in the sea.
She inspired a generation of American music by virtually living the blues. Bessie Smith grew up a poor orphan in Chattanooga, Tennessee, where she sang on street corners for pocket change. In time, her intensely powerful voice carried her from traveling shows to New York recording studios, making her the most successful classic blues singer of her generation.
I used to listen to a lot of Bessie Smith. Something about the texture of her voice I really liked, and I liked her lyrics a lot.
When you hear Bessie Smith sing St. Louis Blues, you know she was feeling it.
She exuded confidence. She was like, I'm going to get up here and I'm going to belt out a song. I am going to wail. I'm going to rock.
Janis Joplin said she owed her career to Bessie. And upon finding out that Bessie had been laid to rest with no headstone, she paid for a monument to be constructed at her gravesite. Next, the soulful music of Dusty Springfield.
Dusty Springfield had one of the best contemporary voices of the pop music.
She was a reluctant pop star whose young soprano voice came to life in the mid-60s.
I saw her talking about her first appearance on British TV as tears go by. She said she was so nervous that she was frozen. She couldn't move it. Those big eyes. And she looked so sweet and so pretty.
But mid-career, Marianne Faithfull tired of just looking pretty, and her voice dropped to a new register. A register better suited to convey the pain she had suffered.
Usually, if you have that kind of incredible success with one type of voice, then you stick to it. But she transformed herself into something else again. And now I think she's better now.
Faithfull's unsparing lyrics made her a pioneer of the raw, jagged female music that was to come.
Marianne Faithfull's Broken English album was one of the first albums that really had adult lyrics and dealt with relationships in a grown-up way.
I've always admired Marianne's go for it. You know, she'll always come up with an idea or try on something that's like very, very difficult to pull off and do it, you know. She's got some guts, that girl.
Plenty of pop singers were wearing beehives throughout the 60s, but there was one whose voice was truly unforgettable.
Dusty Springfield may have looked the part of a 60s glamour girl, but beneath the makeup was a stunningly powerful voice.
Who could listen to that and not melt? She's got that really slow vibrato that's really difficult to do, and it just gives me the chills.
As a white British soul singer, Dusty broke all the rules. She used her husky, mournful voice to confront heartbreak and sang unashamedly of her intimate emotions.
Dusty Springfield is one of the great women singers of the last 30 years. Her album, like Dusty in Memphis, is a classic album.
Billy Ray was a preacher's son. When his daddy would visit, he'd come along. When we gathered around and started talking.
Dusty Springfield had one of the best contemporary voices of the pop music era. And there's still been, there's very few voices today that I've heard that have been as good.
The only boy who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. The only one who could ever teach me was the son of a preacher man. Yes, he was.
Dusty Springfield is the female vocalist, in my mind, who deserves a place in history. There's no color to her voice. You know, everybody loves her. She doesn't belong just to the English. She belongs to the entire universe. We love the sound of her voice.
And the only one who could ever teach me was the son of a preacher man. The only boy who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. Yes, he was. He was.
In 1966, Dusty had a dispute with legendary jazz drummer Buddy Rich, who was enraged that Dusty received top billing over him. After he called her every name in the book, Dusty replied in a ladylike fashion by punching him in the face. Our next band had many disputes of their own, usually within the group, though.
They transformed their folk roots into pop hits that defined their California lifestyle.
All the leaves are brown, and the sky is gray,
The Mamas and the Papas had a chemistry between them that made them truly extraordinary. The beautiful former model Michelle Phillips and the defiantly charming Cass Elliot provided contrasting images of female power.
Cass was the most emancipated woman that I knew. I was in awe of her, and she was absolutely fearless.
The thing that influenced me the most and really truly did mesmerize me, especially in my younger years, is their harmony arrangements. The uniqueness of the way they arranged their vocals and the separation in the harmonies and everything. And it was just very, very cool.
Sometimes it just turns out that way.
Their voices intermingled to perfection, creating 9 top 40 hits in their short but pivotal 3-year career.
Find me crying all of the time.
When the Mamas and the Papas regrouped in 1982, John Phillips replaced former wife Michelle with daughter actress Mackenzie Phillips. Still to come in this hour, 2 of rock's most enduring talents. There are just 2 women left in this hour of the 100 greatest women of rock and roll. The first is a country legend who began her career as a folk singer in the coffee houses of New York.
I'm not really coming from anywhere. I'm just on my way.
Emmylou Harris is an artist without boundaries. In her 29 years of making music, she's sailed beyond horizons of folk, pop, and country.
Concert I ever went to was Emmylou Harris, and Emmylou to me was like a goddess. I just remember being in awe of her. Her voice was so beautiful.
There's a valley of sorrow in my soul, where every night I hear the thunder.
She was somebody I listened to a great deal growing up.
Like the sound of a distant gun.
Beautiful voice. No one else sounds like her.
For all the damage I have done.
I love music. So as long as I've got an idea in my head or in my heart, then I'm just going to keep doing it.
Thank you. Early in her career, Emmylou was taken under the wing of the artist at number 21, who became the highest paid woman in rock in the 70s.
She is one of the most respected voices in American popular music.
Linda Ronstadt always seemed to me to be somebody who was very, very vital and, you know, sort of an electric presence.
By the 1970s, she was a reluctant star and an even more reluctant sex symbol.
When will I be loved?
But beneath the sometimes glossy surface, Ronstadt is a meticulously trained singer.
Obviously, she's got maybe one of the most gorgeous voices that has ever existed. But besides that, she really understands a lot about music.
She's got that little special thing in her voice, that unique thing where kind of Patsy Cline had it, you know, where she's crying when she's singing. You hear that little break in her voice. I just think she's very gifted.
most gorgeous voices on earth.
More of the greatest women in rock and roll history. There's just 20 more artists to go, so you'll have to come back to find out who they are. But I'll leave you now with a sneak preview. I'm Courtney Cox. Thanks so much for joining us.